back to the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I'm Aaron Brightman, back with David Anderson to preview Rutgers-Iowa Friday night at SHI Stadium, 8 p.m. on Fox National Television. Huge spot for the Scarlet Knights, 3-0 entering the game. Iowa 2-1. Rutgers last year, same exact spot, played Washington at home. Had some fortuitous moments in that game, did not completely outplay Washington. Believe they were outgained even in that game, but came through with some big moments. Iowa has been just kind of a nemesis in that Rutgers has never really been able to get over that hump. I think it was the Chris Ash game that was actually the Janarian Grant game 14-7 was probably the closest they've played them over the years. And can this finally be the moment with Rutgers having an offense that we think is the best it's going to be in a long time? Obviously, lots of questions on defense. David, what are some of your initial thoughts on this matchup against the Hawkeyes Friday night in Piscataway?
Well, kind of like we talked about last year where Rutgers faced 6 opponents in a row that they had never beaten. And we were just hoping that they could get some of those monkeys off their back. And they did a decent job doing so. I don't think this game, if Rutgers plays like they did against Washington last year, they're going to win. In that game, as you mentioned, they squeaked out a victory because Washington missed 3 field goals. There's that bizarre running onto the field during play that gave Rutgers a chance to recover from a blocked field goal and score a touchdown the next play. Rutgers, like you said, was outgained by over 200 yards in that game. And Rutgers had 10 drives. They scored 3 touchdowns. They had the drive where Kyle Monungai ran out of the end zone, one of the best plays we've ever seen a Rutgers player make. And the other 6 drives, they went 3 and out. That's not going to get the job done in this game. That being said, I think Rutgers is the higher ceiling team, especially right now with the way Iowa's offense is playing. So in short, if Rutgers plays their best game, they will win. And in the last few years, that has not been true. A lot of these other teams, we were just kind of hoping they didn't play their best and Rutgers played well and they would secure victories. But the script is kind of flipped now. If the defense can show some improvement and the offense can kind of just, in effect, blitz Iowa offensively and just don't let them breathe and just complete passes, boom, 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 then I think the Rutgers Scarlet Knights are going to come away with their first ever win against the Iowa Hawkeyes.
I love the optimism. I agree that, listen, yes, if Rutgers plays their best, I think there's several concerns here. One, of course, is injuries. Ian Strong missing last game. We think it was precautionary. We're really not sure if if it was really just kind of to keep him ready for this game, or is it an extended type of thing? His impact has been huge on this offense already. Him not being in this game will certainly be a big loss if he does not play, but will also likewise be a big lift if he can.
Right.
And certainly Rutgers' number one weapon. Then you, of course, had the left tackle scenario on offense. Dante Chen's out for the year. Tyler Needham looks like he had another unfortunate, significant injury in the last game. You had the injury to the transfer in the offseason. Langsdale. So, you're essentially looking at a 4th left tackle now, whoever it may be. And maybe they take someone else from the line and move them over. Really don't know what that's going to look like. But we talked about in the preseason having a concern about the line that obviously they had stability. They had a lot of starters back. But left tackle, huge glaring hole without Holland Pierce. And it's just been a revolving door so far. How concerned are you about the offensive line injuries and just the offense as a whole if they don't have Ian Strong in this game as well?
Offensive line, I would say medium concern. I'd probably say the same thing with Strong because, KJ Duff and Ian Strong have I wouldn't call it a redundant skill set, but they give you the ability to take advantage of matchups, and there's only one ball. And you saw last week, they really tried to see how – kind of try to push Duff and Sheffield to see, okay, how much can they do? And then bring Benjamin Black along as the 4th receiver who had to be a starter last week. So I think they can win even if Strong doesn't play, to say that. But, of course, I was mentioning this on the Play of the Fight Song podcast that I was on for Iowa the other day. I can barely remember Ian Strong even being tackled this year. It feels like every play is either a touchdown or he's kind of eventually ends up out of bounds with like two guys on his legs that just kind of fall off. He's been that physically, dominant in their games. So from a receiver standpoint, I think they can get by unless, like you said, it's compounded by offensive line issues. It does seem like if Mashad Giwa hits the start at left tackle, which is, obviously a huge thing. He's got only a few reps under his belt, and it was against, an FCS team in Norfolk State a week ago. But Iowa has two physical beasts on the defensive line, Aaron Graves and Ethan Herkett, but they're bigger, stronger, powerful guys. They're not like pure speed rushers. So I think, Giwa might be the right move anyway, just in terms of the type of guys that Iowa presents on their front. They're good players who are big and strong, but they're not just complete, just speed rushers off the edge. So from that standpoint, if you got your other four guys are solid in what they're doing for the most part, and you can help with tight ends, backs, whatever, then I think that, again, even if Ian Strong doesn't play, and Mashad Giwa has to start, there's still a path for them to win, which is why I feel like there's some optimism here. Again, in that scenario, they would need Duff to play well. They need Sheffield to play well. They need Athan to play better than he played last week when he sailed a few on deep balls. But it is still winnable because Rutgers has an offense. And that's what you have to kind of feel good about as a fan going into this game, as well as subsequent games. I think when you look at the schedule, this is one of the best chances Rutgers has to pick up a victory that will put them towards bowl eligibility. Even though Iowa's a historically good program with a pretty good defense, but their offense is not great. Rutgers' offense is definitely better. So if they can come into this game and get things done, then we're going to be feeling pretty good on Saturday.
Yeah, good points. I think a key that, we've talked offline about, and they really haven't done a lot of, obviously, in the non-conferences. They really need to throw over the top, I think, early in the game to try to open up the field. Amazingly, in all three games as a team, they've averaged 4.0 yards rushing per carry, 3 straight games. They're going to have to be effective on the ground in this game in some fashion. I'm a little concerned about a lot of the 10-yard out patterns, sideline balls they've had. They've been able to distance themselves against the opponents they played. You have to imagine Iowa, their corners are going to be all over that. They're going to have to take some shots down the field over the middle. That's why I think Strong is so crucial in playing in this game. But, you have seen him build a rapport with Sheffield. I love that, I don't love Sheffield having a couple drops, 2 games in a row, but I do love that Shiraka goes right back to him and he is able to redeem himself. But I think he's going to be a key player in this game. But conversely, the Iowa running game, Rutgers now against Ohio, they gave up 6.5 yards per rush. Miami of Ohio, 5.3 yards per rush. And then even Norfolk State, it was 5 yards in the first half, 4.7 for the game. Iowa, obviously strong in the run. How concerned are you that they're going to try to control the game on the ground, grind Rutgers down physically, and really be able to kind of take control and really win the game due to that aspect of this matchup?
Yeah, that's definitely a concern because if they can keep the Rutgers offense on the sideline, we know that, it's not good for any team ever to just be sitting there on the sideline while your defense is just getting pushed for 5 yards of play. Obviously, Iowa has Logan Jones, a center, could be first-team All-American. They've got Dunker, the right tackle. He could be a first-team All-American. They got Stevens, who's the guard, who could be all Big Ten. All these guys. My concern is that Iowa is just going to run that just simple down blocking, hat on hat, up front against Rutgers, especially to the right side, occasionally mixing to the left side, and then run play action off of that to try to get their quarterback, who's really struggled to see the field, just some simple plays. Yes, that is my huge concern because then Rutgers has to keep as many guys in that box just to stop the run as possible, and it allows these running lanes either for the quarterback to roll out. He's got not wheels per se, but he's a thick lower half guy who can get yardage in the run game. And then they also have Wetjen, who's the return man, who had this ridiculous 95-yard over-the-shoulder punt return touchdown, as well as he scored on a reverse against UMass. And so the more guys you have to commit to the middle of the field, the more you allow those guys on the outside to just have space and for their quarterback to just see the field better. The other concern that I have in those type of action is Rutgers is not tackled well in terms of taking good angles. So if they run a reverse, a lot of Rutgers teams in the past were very good at turning a reverse into a loss of yardage. I'm not so sure about this team because they're going to have to maintain their integrity longer in their positions before they break off and try to make a play. That discipline is where we are with this defense. They're not kind of at level 4, level 5. They're kind of at level 2 or level 3 of what they need to do in terms of their assignment, alignment, and technique. So that is a major concern that, yes, there's easily a path for Iowa to win this game if they're just pounding it on the ground, and Rutgers simply Rutgers has done a pretty good job stopping middle runs last year as well as early this year. If teams just want to run a dive between the center and guard, Rutgers has stopped that. But when they get in motion and everyone's kind of flowing to one side and running backs can pick a hole and pick angles, they seem to be gaining a lot of yardage in all 3 games this year, as well as dating back to the second half of last year, even when Rutgers was winning. So, yeah, obviously that's a major concern heading into this contest.
Yeah, and I just go back to 2 years ago where we all had high hopes, Rutgers going to Iowa. A lot of people thought they could win that game and physically just got beat up in that game. And you saw the toll it took in that fourth quarter where Iowa pretty much blew them out. And then I thought, we've talked about it many times, that the reciprocal effect of that the following week, they just were not the same team after that. Right. And I worry that in this game, you're going to see that in the third, fourth quarter. That defensive line for Rutgers has not been consistent in terms of generating pressure, stopping the run on the first level. Linebackers are obviously going to be key in this game, but safety play. How concerned are you with the safeties? Elad, Sanders, both been pretty inconsistent so far. Both have made some plays, but also given up some big plays as well. You mentioned the positioning. How much of this is going to be on, say, Jabome with his, a lot of Big Ten experience now under his belt, calling the defense, making sure people, know the coverages. It just seems like they've been discombobulated at times, even against the Norfolk State last week in certain moments. I guess, what is the key to this defense being poised and being able to hang in there?
So because of the way Iowa's can do a lot of that down blocking in the run game, some of those stunts and twists that Rutgers ran last week against Norfolk State that they started to figure out how to do better against Miami of Ohio, those are less effective, right? Because if you're crossing, you're not looking straight ahead. You're not just penetrating your run gap right away. Gives the offensive line extra time to get further on those man or even reach blocks. So it's going to mean that the defensive line is probably going to have to play it more straight up. Now, I think Rutgers kind of figured out that they're not strong enough to just kind of sit down in their run gap, that they kind of have to go what we saw with Kansas State in the bowl game last year, where they just have to penetrate the gap, which at times can result in negative plays, but also can leave you susceptible. I think the defensive line is going to have to stay home a lot in this game, which means, to your point, that Jabome this is maybe the most important game of the season for him, because Iowa, other than Wetjen on those reverses, they get Moulton, who's their fastest running back probably from injury, but they're not a home run offense that should be able to go sideline to sideline. And so Jabome is at his best when he's in the middle of the field and he can use that burst and power that he has. He's not necessarily like a speedy long distance runner, but he has that pop in the middle of the line, and he's going to have to be able to do that and fight through traffic. I mean, this is one of those games where if you just put Olakunle Fadukasi in the middle of that defense, or Steve Longa, even a Kaiwan Lewis or DeVron Thompson, this would be a perfect game for those type of guys who knew how to fight through traffic and then didn't have to go literally sideline to sideline. This would be a perfect game. Can Jabome play at that level? That is going to be probably the biggest thing that happens with this offense, because with this defense stopping the Iowa offense, because to your other part that you started with the safety play, I think the safeties are going to have to be a little bit creative with the coverages Rutgers is running in the back end, because Mark Gronowski has struggled with seeing the field. He's listed at 6'2", but I think there's a big difference between a 6'2" quarterback who can't see over these like massive linemen that they have versus, when Rutgers has Ethan Kaliakmanis or past Iowa teams they face that have these taller quarterbacks. So I think the safeties are going to have to be disguising and mixing up their coverage, which means they're going to be an extra step slow to a lot of these like hard, quick hitting run plays, which means it's even more on the linebackers to be able to step up and do that. So yeah, huge pressure on Jabome, huge pressure on Moses Walker, or whoever else is in there, Wright, Abram Wright, whoever else is in that middle, they're going to be a lot more pressure on the linebackers this week than a lot of the other games Rutgers will have this season. Because, again, if the safeties just stand where they are, that's going to allow the Iowa passing game to get going. But if they're rolling coverage and moving around and confusing them, Iowa's just going to go into their typical, just like Shiano would do, and just try to pound it in the run, pound it in the run, pound it in the run game. So that's kind of hopefully touched on all the three parts of your question.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Can the defense out physical the Iowa offense? It's going to be a key question in this game. One thing to note too, I mean, it's early and it's only been 3 games, but Iowa's defense, their stats rank, top, near the top in almost every category. They haven't allowed more than 238 yards total in a game. That was Iowa State, who's obviously off to a great start. Top 15 team, 3-0. Iowa State has averaged 450 yards total offense, and there are 2 other games, including Kansas State, just 238 against Iowa. So it's going to be that for, obviously it's cliche, but like how Rutgers starts this game is going to dictate so much. And we've seen them struggle against Iowa early and then make key. They always blink first. They make that first turnover. Was that 3 years ago at home where the disaster, the 3 picks or whatever. So it's just going to be really interesting to see how Rutgers responds to this moment, but B, also I think offensively, Shiraka's game planning with what their first 15 play calls is on that sheet that they have ready to go, and how they're going to attack the Iowa defense.
Yeah, I mean, I think to your point, we haven't seen a lot of games like this. Maybe Northwestern comes to mind 2 years ago, where Rutgers just popped 2 touchdowns on an opening drive against a Big Ten opponent. I mean, again, they were able to do it against Ohio and, Miami. I get it, like against other competition. But, or even the Virginia Tech game 2 years ago. Well, I guess both last year and the year before, and when they've done that and they've jumped to these starts, they have forced other teams to get away from what they wanted to do. And so that's really how, Iowa's fan base for sure is. I haven't seen a single person even pick them to not win by over a score other than JP, who had me on his podcast. Everybody else has them. They're like cruising pretty much in a sense. So if Rutgers can put that doubt in their mind of their players and the people on that opposite sideline with, let's say, 2 quick touchdowns or a block punt touchdown or something, and they're up 14-0, like I think that, like you said, not blinking first, I mean, that would be the first time that happens in this series, and probably likely, a different outcome. I definitely think that's true. I think special teams, and I'm already moving to that, is going to be huge because Iowa also had 2, I believe it was extra points blocked. One might've been a field goal, but basically UMass just saw something on the film. They overloaded one side and they got 2 blocks. Like Iowa was just at a loss. I'm sure they'll get that cleaned up this week, but for 2 teams that have won so many games under their current coaching staffs with good special teams play, it's entirely possible that, again, if both teams are okay in special teams, I think that, then it'll come down to, can Rutgers offense score enough points? But if it's entirely possible that this game's tide is turned on, let's say, 2 big special teams play, a punt return by Iowa or a block punt by Rutgers or something of that sort that ends up setting the tone for the rest of the game, and then that team kind of taking control with that happens. So special teams are going to be a huge factor in here. Again, historically, Iowa's a good special teams club, just like Rutgers, but we saw with the Knights, they had 2 extra points blocked last week which was pretty bad. So yeah, whoever, again, I don't really think special teams is going to be the difference, but if either team can get a big play in that phase of the game, it's going to impact the rest of the way big time. And that team is probably going to end up coming out victorious.
And how concerned are you about Rutgers having 2 extra points blocked in that Norfolk State game? Obviously, Patel now extending his field goal streak to 18 consecutive, most in program history, but did field goals, yeah. But he had two extra points blocked in that game. How much of that was on the line and the snap?
Medium. It seemed like the snaps were not perfect. One of them was, I think, really hard for the holder to come through. And then Patel couldn't bail it out either. The other one seemed like not a great snap. The holder could have made it a little bit better hold, and Patel still should have gotten it over. So, yeah, it's concerning because, it's just like a quarterback throwing to a receiver. If he throws it a little bit behind him, like that one pass to Ian Strong 2 weeks ago, he just reached behind it, took it, and then still went for a touchdown. Whereas, like, there's other plays that, a perfect throw is dropped. So, I mean, yes, if their long snapper is feeling the pressure, I think it's Michael O'Connor, the former kicker, is one of the long snappers. They had brought in that other long snapper from out west, but it didn't seem like he worked out. He's already out of the program. So, there's a lot of pressure on the long snapper and the holder because, this could come down to a field goal. And we know Patel, if the snap is good and the hold's good, he's been extremely reliable, knock on wood. But it's a pretty big operation to make that happen in a big moment. And we saw Rutgers win this game last year because Washington missed 3 field goals. I say this game because, like you said, it was week 4, 3-0 Rutgers, night game, very similar in that regard. But in terms of their opponent, you're playing a complete opposite type of team.
Yeah. And I don't have the probability in front of me, but you also have to look at the whole schedule. And the percentage difference between making a bowl game by winning this game versus losing this game, I think
it's massive.
It's a huge margin because if you lose this game, the road to 6 is so much greater than just needing to win 2 games when you're going to be favored most likely against Purdue and Maryland with, still few 50-50, 60-40, 40-60 games there. Where if you're 3-1, then boom, you go to Minnesota next week. Obviously, they're struggling. They lost at Cal last year. Was it Cal?
Yeah, it was. They lost to Cal last week, and they're on a bye this week.
Right. So they're going to get rested up. They're going to be chomping at the bit. They're going to want payback for last year. So, but with the opportunity to go out there 4-0 with a chance to go 5-0, it's just we're talking about 2 completely different seasons. And I think for this team, with the way they went through, I felt you. I was channeling you in my recap when the takeaway was that they did not dominate any of their 3 opponents in non-conference play. Obviously, they won handily the last 2, but I do think that we've seen in years past that translates to a warning sign once they get into play, and that's what's troubling me the most about this team. And someone gave me I did a power rankings again for Ant Wright, and I put Rutgers 12th, and Rutgers fan Ian, who's great, was like, what's going on? I said, I have no confidence in the defense. And to add to that, we're down to our 4th left tackle, which might not even be the 4th left tackle. It might just be someone we put there as the 4th left tackle.
Yeah.
Ian Strong might not play. There's a lot of question marks about this team going into a huge game. If they can persevere and come out on the other side, then yes, of course, like last year, the way this team handled adversity, it's renewed hope. You believe in this team, but I think this is a huge litmus test for the character of this team, but also what the ceiling of this season could ultimately be.
Yeah, when it comes to the defense, kind of like you said, what concerns me about this is the things they seem to start doing better, twisting, stunting, getting a little bit more pass rush, cornerback play. Those are not the things that Iowa is going to try to attack. They're going to try to pound you in the run game and attack your safeties. Like, that's what they're going to do. And so it's like, that's what kind of tempers my confidence on that side of the ball, is like the areas Rutgers has improved are the opposite of like where Iowa is going to attack them in all likelihood. And so the defense is going to have to figure out how to improve these other areas that have kind of been trailing along behind. But they don't have, like, Iowa's offense is not so good that they have to be perfect. Iowa's offense probably isn't even as good as Ohio, but their defense is better. So Rutgers isn't going to score in every possession. But if your defense can just hold them to 20, then the offense should be able to, that means 3 touchdowns, you win. Just like, again, even if it's by hook or by crook, and the opposite of how that Washington game went a year ago, Rutgers got to 21 points and won the game. That's kind of where we are kind of with this game. And that's where, the defense has to just figure out, are we going to just sit back and hope they shoot themselves in the foot, which Iowa offenses have been known to do? Or are we going to try to bring pressure, risk a possible big play? Or are we going to try to just play it straight up? I think that it's possible any of those 3 are the wrong choice. And it's up to this coaching staff to figure out, like, what is the best for this defense's psyche to be able to get them to make a few stops. Maybe they make a few stops and confidence goes up and they're a different group. Or maybe the opposite. Iowa scores on their first 2 drives and we're in the same exact thing as Ohio, and Rutgers offense, has to punt 2 times and lose, right? I think there's a lot of questions in this game. And a lot of times you've heard me say, especially in the last 2 years, whichever team comes to play is going to win. This game's a little bit more complicated than that because you have 2 teams with completely opposite strengths and weaknesses. And so who, like you said, blinks first, makes the big play, is going to come out victorious. But I would say, this is 50-50. Just so people don't think I'm too optimistic or too bad. Like, this is 50-50. Again, if Rutgers plays their best, they'll win. But there's a lot of things that have to go right for that to happen. And I think Rutgers is a lower floor than Iowa as well. So, again, I'm excited. I'm nervous. I'm excited, nervous because, the way I look at it now, especially with sports like Rutgers football, is every game in the Big Ten is an opportunity to just put another win on the ledger, another memorable game. We're not Kirk Ferentz, who has so many wins that they're not going to remember a random game in like 2007. Like, if Rutgers wins this game, it's going to be memorable for a long time, Sure. And that's what's exciting about it as a fan of the program heading into this matchup on Friday night. But yeah, I'm optimistic cautiously, but I'm also nervous because I'm like excited and nervous at the same time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, can we see this team take another step forward? One thing to note, as well as the offense has played in those first 3 games in the first half, if it wasn't for special teams plays in the game against Ohio, the game against Norfolk State, and then that big interception in the game against Miami of Ohio, Rutgers doesn't go to halftime with much of a lead at all. So, and then in all 3 games, the defense gave up a touchdown to start the second half. So those are all warning signs again that it's, can they put it all together? Can they take a step forward? Or is what happened in non-conference play kind of a sign of things that could negatively impact this team going forward? Iowa, certainly a tough test. Wanted to ask you 3 more things before we go. Joe Harris-Simiak at UMass just played Iowa. How much does that help Rutgers in this game from a prep standpoint, or is that, overrated?
Let's say it this way. Coming into the season, I thought that it would benefit Iowa more because the defensive scheme from UMass would be the same as Rutgers. But UMass was really playing things a little bit differently. Former night Timmy Heinsberger had a nice delayed blitz sack. So maybe Rutgers can take some of that away, but I think it's actually going to benefit Rutgers slightly, whereas preseason I thought it was going to benefit Iowa significantly. So, yeah, something can be gained, but from both teams.
True or false? The Brent Pry era ended at Virginia Tech when Rutgers beat them both times.
Probably true. I would say probably last year. Yeah. Probably last year, the fact that they didn't come back and win that game, they were a mess for a while.
And it was in Blacksburg. It definitely took the wind out of the sails of the fan base. And I think he never really got the momentum back. He got fired after an 0-3 start, lost to Old Dominion last weekend. And then I just wanted to end it on a positive note. I do go on social media and on Rutgers' Facebook page tonight. Someone who's an 18-year season ticket holder admitted that they had to give up their season tickets because they were unemployed. and said that his youngest daughter was so upset that they couldn't go to the blackout game, and they were able to get it was either a neighbor or a friend on that Facebook page contacted them, and they got 2 tickets for the game on Friday. So let's end it on a positive note. As a fan base, that's an amazing feat. That's the beauty of social media, connecting people, and that makes me really happy that happened. And so that's going to make me more optimistic going into this game. If they lose by double digits, I won't be surprised. But at the same time, you're right. And the crowd's going to have so much to do with this. We didn't really talk about that, the blackout game. They're going to be amped up. There are a lot of seats available online still. Hopefully they gobble them up. No pun intended for Virginia Tech. And just in terms of this game, any last thoughts just on this game or anything else in terms of the state of the program going into a massive game 4?
Yeah, I mean, on the fans, like, they need you, right? This does matter. That's the first thing. But then the second thing is, from the state of a program standpoint, you did what you had to do. You're 3-0. You set yourself up. Obviously, again, I hope that they think they can beat Ohio State, Penn State, and Oregon. But that's going to be a really tough task. So really what we're looking at is 6 games where you're going to make or break your season in 6 games. And this is one of those 6. And with it being at home, blackout, teams excited, early season, depth even is being tested. They still got guys like we are so far from other eras of Rutgers football in terms of how healthy the program is to be in this position. I mean, I'm sure there'll be a lot of recruits there, possibly in the upcoming class. I mean, signing day is less than 3 months away, which is crazy to think about, type of thing. But, having a good environment, recruits will feel that. It feeds the fire. Success breeds success. And, I mean, Rutgers did what they had to do in the non-conference to set themselves up to potentially have a good season this year. So hopefully that continues on Friday night.
Yeah, and last thought is that, we talked about it before, but Kelly Zen needs all the momentum she can get. And if Rutgers can beat Iowa, a signature win on national TV, you have to imagine that at least she's going to have more phone calls be taken or answered by corporate sponsors or what have you, donors in the next week if they can win this game. I really think it's that much of a literal impact right now on the ground floor as she's getting her feet under her and taking over Rutgers athletics. So huge game for so many reasons. Thanks so much for listening and watching this game preview with David. Thanks so much for always being here. And thanks once again. And we'll see what happens. We'll be back to talk about it soon enough. Let's go Rutgers and talk to you soon.
Go Knights.